Hello and welcome to our editor video. Over here you can see the profiler, and if we play the game, you'll see more managers being run. We can also launch Tracy directly from our engine, and we can pause to see the amount of time each system is taking up as such. So let me just close this and go back to our engine, and let me load the scene that I've created just now, just a very small scene. So over here, we have a rock, we have a player, and we have a skylight. And let's say, okay, let me disable the drawing of collider so that you can properly see the texture. Let's say you want to create more rocks. There's two ways to go around that. First, we can copy and paste, or we can make it an archetype. So let's show our archetype editor, which is changed from M1. First, we can import the data from the inspector, and we can save this as a new archetype called rock. So now we right click and add an entity. Now a new option will appear called rock, and now I actually want to add it to the root directory, to the root entity, which doesn't exist. And let me just drag this out and do the same thing with another rock. So we add 3 rocks in total as such. So now let's say I want to change how the rocks look. We can do that in the archetype editor. Let's say I want to remove the texture. If I save this to the rock, you can see that both of these have lost their texture. The reason why this still has a texture because this wasn't a rock to begin with. However, if I change this to a rock, it will also lose its texture. So let me just undo that and save this back as a rock. And the reason why the positions don't get changed even after I set the archetype, even after I save the archetype, is because if you look into position, it's actually not copying from archetype because it has been changed already. However, if I put yes, copy from archetype, it will be reset back to its original position with this still being ticked. The moment I move this, it will be unchecked. Next, we can multi-select. So actually we can just do that on the gizmos by double clicking and double and control clicking. So we can move the floors, we can scale them, and we can rotate them as well. Yep, something like that. The rotation is a bit weird because of a gimbal lock. And yeah, we can undo all of those changes as well and redo all of them. Okay, now let's play around the lighting. So I have created already a light archetype, so let me just add that in. And where is this guy? Okay, it's all the way over here. If I move it closer to the rock, you can see that there's a slight glow on it. Yeah. So let's make it more obvious by going to the light component and changing the color, let's say to pink, because why not? And increasing the intensity, and this is known as a spotlight, which only shines light directly from the top. So you can see if I change the cone size, it will get bigger. If I change the if I make the outer cone larger than smaller than the inner cone, then I have a cool shadow effect, which is not really intended, but it's fine. So next, let's make it something like this and move it a bit up so that you can just make it larger. Yeah, something like this will look nice. Okay, we can also change the intensity and the position offset. And let me create another light source, and this time I'm going to make it a spotlight. So a point light. Point light shines light all around it. So what this means is that if I bring it all the way down to the level of the rocks over here, and if I increase the intensity, you can see that the edges of the rocks are being shone on also, not just the top. Yeah, so there's also a bunch of variables that I can meddle with here. Yeah, and I think overall looks pretty cool. Yeah, and also we can change how the light is being reflected off. So if I add a material component, I have more variables that I can change, and I can also change the texture of the rocks. This doesn't change the light color, it just changes the texture color. And I can make it more or less metallic and more or less shiny. So this roughness is like the shine level. If I rotate the camera, you can see that the light is getting reflected off the floor. Yeah, if I increase this roughness, then you can no longer see that. So I think this looks pretty nice for now. Okay, let's go to the player now. Right now if I press play, you notice that you can't really see anything, and that's because we don't have a camera in the game. So let's attach a camera to the player. By doing so, I decide to add the camera to the player object, as a child of the player, so that I can dynamically link both of them. So this means that when the player moves, the camera will move too. So let's drag out the game scene to view the camera, and let's set it active. So I need to get okay, so now I can see the player, and now I just have to move him back a bit, something like that. Make sure the player is in the center and move it a bit up because the player will fall. So now if I press play, you can see the player in view. And also if I change the transform of the player, you'll notice that the camera will follow the rotation of the player too. I'm changing the player's rotation, not the camera's rotation. Yeah, something like this. And now let's add a script to make the player move. And bring this back so I can see something. So for the player, we'll add the FSM player, and when I press play, the player should be able to move. Oh, but what's this? I get a bunch of error messages and the player still can't move, and that is because move does not exist as a force. So what I need to do is to go to the rigid body component and add a force called move. I can specify how much force this move gives, but for a nice number that I already predetermined is around 440. So now if I press play, I should be able to move the player. Oh no, I guess it's still too small. Let's make it a bit larger, maybe like 1000. Yep, something like this looks better. I think because now I'm in debug mode. Yeah, that's why it's a bit off. Oops. So next, let's add the audio component, because you can see that it's trying to find the footsteps and shooting event, but it doesn't have an audio component. So let's also drag this and this into here. Now when I press play, the warning should stop. Yeah, but the reason why you don't hear any audio is because there is no listener. So let's make a listener. Very simply, I just need a transform component and a listener component. And now when you add a listener, you see this debug draw of the audio source, and my listener, once it's inside this radius, will also have like its listen range. So if I now shoot, you can hear the audio. I think the audio right now you can't really hear that it's 3D, but if I move the listener around, let's say in a scene, now it's coming from the right side. If I move it all the way here, you can hear that it's coming from the left side. So next is the bullet. Yeah, as you can just now you saw a bunch of entities being created, but the reason why there was no bullet getting spawned is because no prefab has been set yet. So let's go to the asset browser, data archetypes, and add the bullet archetype. And now when I shoot, I should be able to see bullets flying out. If I want to change the speed of the bullet, I can load the bullet and change the speed over here. As you can tell, sorry, you can't really tell because I haven't saved it yet. Okay, once I save the bullet, I can tell that it's slower. Sorry. Yeah, now it's actually quite slow. So next is our hot reloading. Let me stop this first. If you go into the console, you can see that every time I shoot a bullet, I print this message, shot bullet. I think there's a few short bullets. So let's change that text to something else like short bullet 123, and I just Ctrl S, and when I go back into the game, you have to give it a while to load the scripts. You can see it in the game's console that the compilation has succeeded. So now when I shoot my bullet, my very slow bullet, I should get the message short bullet. Oops, where is it? Short bullet 123 over here instead of short bullet. Okay, now let's move on to the UI. So to create the UI layer, I first have to create a canvas. Let's call this canvas. We give this a canvas component. And when I do that, you notice like a green outline around the 0, 0 position. Let me just enter this first, zoom out a bit more. And yeah, you can see that green outline. So now in the canvas I can also check the snap to grid, and now a grid will spawn, and if I can choose a number of rows and columns in the grid. So now if I create an entity, let's say sprite, and where is this guy? Okay, now you can see that it's snapping to the, let's make him a bit larger. You can see that he's snapping to the edges of the grid as such. Yep. So let's spawn more of this guy. Copy, copy, and copy. And let's also change their sizes to make it more interesting. Something like that. Yep. And now if I uncheck snap to elements, and let me just change the grid color because it's not black isn't a very nice color. So I'll change the snapping color to not blue because that's the background color. And now you can see that it's snapping to the elements. Sorry, I forgot to remove the grid. Now you can tell that it's snapping to the elements. If you find the snapping force too strong, you can also reduce it here. Let's say like 6. And now it's still snapping, just that the force is much smaller because the snapping distance is smaller. So next is there's also this cool feature where you can distribute horizontal spacing, and now they'll be spaced out evenly, and vertical spacing too. You can also apply spacing. So currently the spacing is being controlled here. If I change this to 0, you will see that now they're all clumped up next to each other. Lastly, since they're all part of the canvas, since they're all a child of the canvas, I can dynamically link all of them, so such that when I rotate the canvas, oops, that's not rotation, such that when I rotate the canvas, all of them will rotate too. Okay, the sprites look kind of boring because they have this just dull color. So let's choose like a texture to set it, and oh no, the texture I want isn't here. In fact, it's in another folder called my screenshots folder, but I want it to be in the game. So I'll just drag it into the editor window and add it in, and now you'll see it appear over here. So let's go to the render and set the texture, and also remove the shader. If not, they'll be taking their light values from an actual light source. And if you can zoom in, you can see my texture, and it's mirrored for some reason. Yeah. So I also want to show like hot reloading of our assets. If you double click this and edit, and let's say just add a squiggle over here, and I save, you can see the squiggle immediately appear. Even if I change the name, so let's say I change this to just screenshot, you can see that the name also updates immediately. Next is the UI camera. So right now if I go back into, oh right, I forgot to make this, okay, if I press play, yeah, you can still see the player, which still moves, but there's no UI, and that's because we don't have a UI camera. So let's add a camera. It doesn't have to be within the canvas. You can just call this UI camera, and we have to make this non-perspective. Next, we have to, okay, this part is temporary for now. We'll think of a better solution next time. But first, you have to add one of the UI, either a button or slider, one of the UI components, and drag and drop the camera. This refers to the camera as such. And now when I run the game, I should be able to see the UI. But for some reason, the UI camera can only render one random entity from here. I have no idea why. Yeah, but it works. If I move the player around, you can see that the UI remains at the same position. So we also have text. So let's just give, I think this one was the one that was showing. So I'll add a text component here. Okay, we also have text which isn't rendered in the scene, only in the game. So as such, like before, I also have to drag and drop the camera, and just go to the game view so that you can actually see it. and type hello world, and you can actually see it there. It's just a white color. Let's give it yeah, this color is nice, and let's make it a bit larger. You can also shift this around wherever you want. Hello world, my name is I cannot type. Yeah, but you get the point. If I press play, this one will remain here. It will not move with the camera. Yeah, and the player is moving slowly is because the movement is not based on DT. God damn it. Okay, but anyway, yeah, that's it for the UI. Now I'll go to another scene for okay, let me save this scene first. And now let me go to another scene to show you our particles and nav mesh. So this is our scene for the particles and nav mesh. I'll first be going over the nav mesh, which is pretty simple. Right now I have a transparent floor. If I press pick nav mesh, it take a while, and you can see like all the triangles represent like a walkable mesh, and there's a couple of them. So yeah, this represents walkable distance, walkable area, but like can't really do much with them as of now, but they'll be improved in the future. You can also remove the nav mesh. And next, let's move on to the particles, which is over there, but you have to play the game to see them animate. I don't have a game camera, so we'll just use the scene view. So yeah, let's change the color begin, because that doesn't look very nice, and let's have a color and something like this. Yeah, and we can change the lifetime of the particles. We can change the number of particles being spawned. We can change the position offset, and we can also change the size begin and size end. Such. So we can also change the amount of variation in the size, and let's keep that small. And as well as if you want to make the particles move, you can change the velocity, so you move in that axis. Yep, like that. Yeah. So if this is too fast, you can also reduce it, and also change the variation and velocity so that it will be more spread out as such. So if you want to see more of the blue, you can actually reduce the lifetime, and now you see that you see more of the blue because it's shorter. Hello and welcome to our editor video from another branch with animation. So first we have to add this rig character cleaned.fpx to our mesh animation package and armature. So once you do that, the animated mesh will appear, and if we drag this slider, we can adjust like you can basically just look at the animation at whatever speed you would like to. So we can also rotate the camera to have a back view of this mesh, which is supposed to be one of our enemies. Yep. So far we only have one animation in our engine, but of course we would need to have more by M3. And that's about it. That's the end of our editor video. Thanks for watching.